Hello and welcome back to the Lazy Big Titty Goth Girlfriend show, where I read you dumb stories that I found and offer my amazing commentary. Of course, 'tis I, PatriciaAbsinthe, as you know, because you clicked on me, and don't mind that when I wear a wig, my eyebrows do this a lot. Okay, let's get into today's story. Also, I am indeed wearing pajama pants on the bottom. Have to be TikTok safe. So today's story is called The Bridal Chamber. Every year, thousands of visitors are attracted to lush, north-central Florida. And as this is starting with Florida, now it's gonna be a good one. Oh, Florida. Its intricate system of inland waterways spread across the state like a fine spiderweb of rivers, streams, and creeks. One of the major water features is Silver Springs River, which feeds into the world's largest artesian springs. Here, over 100 years ago, Claire Douglas and Bernice Mayo lived out a classic Romeo and Juliet drama of love and suicide. Today, their ghosts remain forever locked 30 feet beneath the clear waters of Silver Springs Bridal Chamber. Claire was the only child of wealthy landowner Captain Harding Douglas. Bernice was the daughter of Tom and Jessie Lee Mayo, dirt poor sharecroppers who worked from dawn until dusk on Douglas land to put food on their table. I highly relate. Also, at least the cats are kind of giving you comedic, I guess I was already giving you comedic relief, but even more comedic relief. A bargain. While the Mayos struggled daily to eke out a subsistence living, Claire lived a lonely life of privilege. He was a quiet, solemn child who dreamed of a different life, a life in which he had siblings and a mother to care for him. He didn't understand why his mother had abandoned him. He heard that she had fled her husband's terrible temper immediately after his birth, leaving Claire with a hastily scrawled note that read, "Remember, I love you always. Mother." Aww. See, this is why divorce is important. If you accidentally marry a Looney Tune who beats you, you need to leave. Beside it, she had a golden bracelet embedded with blood-red rubies and ivory-white pearls. The bracelet became Claire's most precious possession, the only tangible memory he had of her. He carried it with him everywhere. Captain Douglas's cruelty extended beyond the treatment of his wife, as of course it does. He hardly spoke to Claire, and when he did, it was to heap criticism or insults on his only son. "Please tell me he's the ghost. Please tell me he's the ghost." Every year, Claire's dislike and fear of his father increased, until even being in the same room with him made him feel sick and helpless. The sharecroppers who worked the land hated and feared him, and Bernice's family had particular reason to despise the cruel-hearted man. When Bernice was only 2 years old, she suddenly became deathly ill. In desperation, her mother went up to the main house and humbly begged Captain Douglas to provide medicine to cure her baby. She did not have enough money to buy it herself, and she feared her little girl might die. Captain Douglas bluntly turned down her request. In his mind, the sharecroppers already had too many children. Is this some ancient Egypt bullshit? Losing one meant one less mouth to feed, as far as he was concerned. Bernice's mother left the Douglas house with a heavy heart, certain she was about to lose her baby. Unable to face her family right away, she decided to go for a walk by the water. On the shores of Silver Springs, there lived an ageless black healer, known to everyone simply as Aunt Scylla. She overheard Bernice's mother crying softly. She listened to her story, then she shook her head, looked at her wisely, and said, "Tears ain't gonna help nothing?" Oh God, you can tell a white person wrote this. Lovely. Aunt Scylla asked if she could take Bernice to stay with her in her cabin by the river. She promised she would return her to the family in good health. Bernice's mother was willing to try almost anything at this point, so she agreed, although she had almost given up hope. Aunt Scylla kept her word. For almost a week, little Bernice stayed with the healer, and at the end of that time she was completely cured. Not only that, the lifelong bond formed between Bernice and the woman who had brought her back from the brink of death. From that time on, the medicine woman took a special interest in Bernice. She promised to read her fortune, and when Bernice was a young teenager, she looked into her future and smiled. She foresaw that Bernice was destined to fall in love with a wealthy young man who would always cherish her. Oh. So his Aunt Scylla showed up with no surprise when Claire Douglas and Bernice Mayo fell in love. Claire's father reacted completely differently, as you can guess, as he's a narcissistic woohoo dickhead. He flew into a rage. He swore that no son of his would ever marry a sharecropper's daughter. It would bring shame upon the family name. Like his fucking attitude doesn't already. His fury fell on deaf ears. Claire loved Bernice. Her impoverished background meant nothing to him, and the more his father ordered him not to see her, the more determined he became to follow his heart. Claire had been lonely for too long to give up the girl he loved and who loved him. Captain Douglas was a stubborn man. He enlisted the help of Claire's embittered spinster aunt. At her brother's request, she whisked Claire off to Europe, determined to make him either change his mind or forget Bernice altogether. Claire went unwillingly, but not before he had promised himself to Bernice. "Don't worry," he reassured her. "My heart belongs to you and nobody else. I promise to always love you. Wait for me." To seal his oath of love, he gave her his most treasured possession, his mother's golden bracelet. She placed it on her wrist and swore never to remove it. As soon as Claire and his aunt left the country, Captain Douglas evicted the Mayo family. And y'all think capitalism and landlords are a great time. Well, anyone watching this probably doesn't, but no. Claire and Bernice made any attempts to exchange letters while he was away, but unbeknownst to the lovers, Claire's father and aunt intercepted all their mail. Time passed, and when Claire didn't hear from Bernice, he assumed she had forgotten him, or worse yet, betrayed him. I mean, I understand the fear, but Bernice arrived at a similar conclusion, but for her it would prove fatal. The broken-hearted girl willed herself to die, unable to face a future without Claire. There was nothing anybody could do to stop her. Because she and Claire had spent countless happy hours together at Aunt Scylla's cabin, Bernice chose to die there, surrounded by her happy memories. Aww. But girl, you don't do that over men. No. No. Bad. Aunt Scylla possessed vast powers, but she did not heal a broken heart. Bernice lay in the small shack on the shore of the springs, her eyes fixed on the bracelet Claire had given her. She refused food and drink and said little. The medicine woman's powers were useless against Bernice's will. She grew pale and weak until finally she confided in her friend that she had a terrible dread of being buried in the ground. "You must take my body," said Bernice, "to Silver Springs and put it in the water there. If you love me, you will carry out my wish. Please, dear Aunt Scylla." Those were her last words. Bernice closed her eyes and passed into the next world. Months later, Claire returned home to the plantation. He had thought of nothing but Bernice while he had been away, and he burned with curiosity to know why she had not answered any of his letters. When he arrived home, his father informed him that he would soon marry the daughter of a wealthy friend. Heavy with sadness and unable to fight any more, Claire agreed. Ugh. What? No, you don't agree. As soon as he could, he sought out Aunt Scylla. Perhaps she could tell him what had become of Bernice. He discovered the woman sitting on a rickety porch. She looked older than he had remembered. Her skin sagged, and she had lost all the vitality that he remembered so well. She sat as still as death, and there was a vacant look in her once bright eyes. He touched her shoulder, but she didn't respond. "Please tell me where Bernice is," he begged. She pointed towards the Silver Springs River. Claire could get no more out of her. Clearly she had lost her mind and was making no sense. He shrugged and walked down to the water's edge. I hope it's a memorial, not her body. That's traumatizing. Claire launched the boat, the same boat that he and Bernice had spent endless joyful hours in together. He rowed out to the spot above Silver Springs where he had proposed to Bernice. It seemed so long ago. Still convinced that Bernice had left him for another man, he let his mind drift backward, unable to understand how she could have done this to him. He felt frightened and more alone than he had ever felt in his whole life. He regretted giving her his mother's gold bracelet. Lost in his thoughts, he let the small boat drift in the clear waters. He must somehow learn how to forget Bernice. A lump formed in his throat, and he leaned over the side of the boat to dip his hand in the cool water. A glint of gold, a reflection from the deep, flashed in the pool. The object was vaguely familiar. He looked more closely. A girl's pale arm moved gently in the current below him. Aunt Scylla actually sent him to her corpse? He recognized his mother's bracelet. He recognized Bernice's image, blurred by the gently moving waters. Suddenly it became clear to Claire that he had been wrong, that Bernice was never meant to leave him, and that she had sacrificed her life for him. Claire knew what he had to do and did not hesitate. He leapt from the boat and sank until his fingers touched Bernice's soft hand. He pulled, hoping to release her, but her body was wedged between two boulders. Claire pulled himself close to her. He inhaled. As the crystal waters filled his lungs, he welcomed death. Minutes later, Aunt Scylla came out of her trance. She looked towards the silver springs where the empty boat floated. She smiled. The lovers were together at last. Their location on Silver Springs River was now called the Bridal Chamber. Tourists who pass over the watery grave in glass-bottom boats are warned to avert their eyes unless they are prepared to glimpse the ethereal forms of Claire and Bernice, locked in each other's arms for eternity. Although their time on earth was tragically cut short, those who see them entwined together forever can be comforted by the fact that the ties that once bound them in this world are now unbreakable. See, I like old ghost stories and all, but fuck, I am so glad society has changed in, some ways, in particular misogyny, and, what the fuck? What the fuck? Like, I very much so believe in ghosts. Probably, obviously. I just can't get over the idea of just kind of yeeting yourself in the water. As even if it was a ghost, like, was he just holding onto, or was he like holding onto a waterlogged corpse? There's just too many questions to the story. And all of them should have been that the dickhead father should have been the ghost. I'm mad now. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to. I will try to make more interesting content at some point, but I have no idea what to make half the time. So, hey, if you have ideas, please offer them, for the love of God. Alright, thanks again.